Hope everybody's doing okay. I'm here to give some of my early impressions for Doom the Dark Ages. I've been looking forward to this game and I've been playing the early access version for the past day and a half. I'm about over halfway through the game and I think I've got a good idea of how the game is and how I feel about it, so I thought it'd be a good idea to share some of these impressions here. Just to give a bit of context on this game, I wasn't actually going to get Doom the Dark Ages because over here in the UK I find the price of the game absolutely outrageous. This has got to be one of the most expensive video games I've ever bought in recent memory. For the standard edition on Steam it is £80, and for the digital deluxe version with the 2 days early access they are asking for £100 here. I think that's $110 as well. So like, this is one of the most expensive games I've bought in recent memory, and I genuinely think it's far too much for any video game. I could maybe see some exceptions if it's like one of your most favourite franchises ever. Now, I do understand that the game is on Game Pass, but I am somebody who likes owning my video games, and I feel like they've went a wee bit too far with the price that they're asking for here, so Game Pass isn't really for me. But what I did leading up to this game was I actually done a full playthrough of Doom Eternal, which I'd never played before. I've only played Doom 2016, which I loved back in the day, but I never played Eternal for some reason, and I got round to it over the past few days and I played a quick playthrough on Ultra Violence to get me ready for this game. I can honestly say I absolutely loved every aspect of Doom Eternal. The only part of Doom Eternal I wasn't able to beat in time was the Ancient Gods Part 2. I was able to beat the Ancient Gods Part 1. So just to give you a heads up before going into this game, because I love Doom Eternal so much, I decided to take the plunge and spend in that amount of money on Doom the Dark Ages here. So am I glad I spent that amount of money on the game? Just to make it clear, I'm not happy about spending that kind of money on any video game, and I don't think any video game is truly worth that kind of price, but it doesn't feel as bad when you're actually having a huge amount of fun with the game that you're playing. So it would have felt bad if I actually didn't enjoy this game, obviously. That's happened with games in the past just recently. I'm not looking at anything in particular, Oblivion Remastered. But I enjoy the game, so it makes me forget about the price. So far, I'm absolutely enjoying the campaign of Doom the Dark Ages. In this day and age, I feel like there's really not a lot of FPS campaign games. They're more like Call of Duty that come out every year that are more multiplayer focused, and I've never really been a multiplayer focused FPS guy. I prefer fighting games for that aspect, and playing this game just reminds me of how much I miss having like really good single player campaigns with really hard difficulties for a good FPS story campaign, and I hope we get more in the future. Microsoft are kind of catering to that aspect down the line. We've got games like Perfect Dark coming out, and I honestly cannot wait to play that game as well, because that's another single player focused FPS game, and I really hope that there's going to be more. I think we've got games like James Bond coming out. Now I'm not entirely sure if that's another FPS game, but I can honestly rank Doom the Dark Ages pretty high for its story so far in a campaign aspect. Now, I know a lot of people are not really enjoying the fact that there's more of a cutscene emphasis in this game. They're kind of like missing just shooting, and that's not really what Doom is about. I honestly can't speak for them because I've not really been like a Doom guy throughout the entire years that I've been playing games, but I honestly don't see a problem with like expanding on the Doom lore. So far, I absolutely enjoy it. Now, no everything I'm going to talk about in this video is entirely positive about Doom the Dark Ages, even though I enjoy the game, and I think it's like enjoyable for people that love Doom and love single player FPS games. But there's aspects about the game that make me question about the future of the franchise, you know? Because this game's gameplay is vastly different from like Doom Eternal's, which was very fast paced, and you're using multiple weapons to deal with the enemies, you're always on your toes, and stuff like that. I feel like Doom Eternal required a lot more thinking in regards to taking down the enemies. Now, a lot of people complained about Doom Eternal because there's a bit of a micromanagement thing going on in Doom Eternal where you had to chainsaw guys in order to get ammo, and you had to burn guys in order to get armor, and like that's how it worked. And some enemies were weak to certain weapons, so you had to switch to other weapons in order to deal with those enemies. And it never really made the gameplay feel stale. At first, when I was playing Doom Eternal, maybe I got a bit annoyed by this micromanagement system, but I grew to love it because there was a high emphasis on skill in Doom Eternal, which is pretty rare for like a single player FPS game as far as I'm concerned. But it always made the gameplay feel fresh, every single level. Like every level I got into, I couldn't wait to see what was going to happen next. Don't get me wrong, there's a couple of like enemies in the game that were annoying coin that had to be taken down a certain way. No game's perfect. Comparing Eternal's gameplay to Doom the Dark Ages, the games are vastly different. If I could honestly like compare them and say it in one word, I would say like Doom the Dark Ages gameplay is far more simplistic. Now I'm playing the game on Nightmare mode, and I can honestly say the game's not been terribly difficult. Just probably because of like how the gameplay loop is, you know, you use your shield to block attacks and parry attacks, and you have to always do that. And you have to melee enemies in order to get ammo, so that's kind of a wee bit similar to Doom Eternal there. But it's not really a big deal. In this game though, it kind of feels like to me some weapons are just straight up better than others, that actually like get rid of the aspect of having to use other weapons in Doom the Dark Ages. And I'm not entirely sure how I feel about it. It feels like a bit of a step back in terms of like managing your weapons, because in this game, enemies are not weak to like certain weapons, no like how it worked in Doom Eternal, and that's what always made the gameplay feel fresh in Doom Eternal. But in the Dark Ages, it's kind of like, oh, I'll just use these better weapons because they're straight up better, and all I have to do now is just parry these big green bolts coming towards me and melee them down for ammo. It's a very simple gameplay loop for Doom the Dark Ages. Is it bad? No. But what I'm saying is, I'm over halfway through this game, and it feels a bit repetitive, so that's not really a positive aspect about Doom the Dark Ages. I'm still having fun with the game, but what I'm saying is, previous Doom titles, I never really felt like anything was repetitive, especially in Doom Eternal, and in this game, I've not even finished it, and the gameplay feels a bit repetitive, if you get where I'm coming from. I mean, seriously, I find myself using other weapons just because I'm a little bit more bored of just using the same weapon over and over again, which is straight up better. So in my mind, it's kind of like you're using other weapons just to freshen stuff up a little bit. That's what it's like in this game, not because you have to, but because you want to keep the gameplay a bit more fresher. Another aspect I'm not entirely loving about the game, I don't mind that the levels are huge, but what I don't really like about them is some of the levels are designed a bit more open worldy rather than more linear, which is what Doom's used to in the past. And it's like not entirely to the game's benefit, in my honest opinion. Now, my main problem with it is, now I love collectibles in video games as much as the next guy, but what I hate about this game's version of the collectibles is there's far like too many of them sprawled across the map, you know? It reminds me of like, you know, mid-generation Assassin's Creeds where they'd no quite littered the map with stuff, but they were getting there. That's honestly the impression that I get from this game a little bit. Don't get me wrong, I don't mind grabbing some collectibles here and there, but when you've got me roaming around for 15 minutes trying to figure out just how to open up this gate, it's like, come on. Are we really trying to like put in some side collectibles, or are we trying to just inflate the playtime of the game? And I think that's what scares me about the future of Doom. The more popular it gets, the more it's going to suffer from like, I don't know, like mainstream gaming problems like that. Because like I say, I like collectibles as much as the next guy, but there comes a time where it just feels like it's getting ever so much closer to Assassin's Creed, which is one of the most like mainstream games that pulls off this kind of thing. And I just don't really see if it's going to be in Doom's benefit to like just make people roam around the swamps trying to find a couple of collectibles. It feels like they're just trying to up the metrics of how long people are spending in the game. And one thing that proves that to me is in Doom Eternal, when you reach the end of the level, you could fast travel to certain checkpoints of the map to go back and get the collectibles you missed. No big deal. In this game, you can't do that as far as I'm aware. And that's because they want you like roaming around for ages trying to find these collectibles just so. In my mind, it's because they want people to see how long people are playing Doom. It's all about numbers. And I just think that's like leaning towards a bad side of the gaming industry, then rather than it being about the game themselves and enjoying the game and the design of the levels, stuff's being created around making the player roam around these endless areas just trying to find a couple of collectibles just so they can say that, oh, you know, these players took like 30 hours to beat our main campaign, look at this, as opposed to like 10, which maybe it would have been before. And I don't think it's a good thing. I'd love to hear people's opinions on that. I love collectibles, but I just feel like there's too much of an emphasis on them here that kind of get like annoying and in the way of the game. I will say, I think the music's better in this game as well than it was in Doom Eternal. I feel like in Doom Eternal there was a lot of like music that felt like legit just noise that was hurting my ears, I'll be honest. And I obviously found out that Mick Gordon didn't do a lot of Doom Eternal. I just found out about that the past couple of days because I'd been binging Doom Eternal in preparation for this game. But I would honestly say the music in this game is better than Eternal. It's nowhere near the levels of Doom 2016, but at least it's like still decent Doom music, so I just thought I would throw that in there. Better than Eternal, nowhere near as good as Doom 2016's, but the OST is not bad at all. A couple of little things to mention though is the dragon flight stuff, because you actually take control of a dragon in this game. I feel like the game didn't need it. You know, I don't know why it's there. It's probably just for spectacles, more of a AAA gaming thing. It's just thrown in there to make people be like, oh cool, he's controlling a dragon. Would have just been better if it was maybe saved for the cutscenes only, you know, and that would have got across the same aspect, because the gameplay of flying around the dragon, it doesn't really do much, and you can't, honestly, I personally couldn't wait to just get back on the floor fighting, so I thought I would throw that in there about the dragon. I feel like the game didn't need it, and they should have just maybe kept it to the cutscenes. I feel like I've got across my points I need to get across for Doom the Dark Ages, guys. I absolutely do enjoy the story of the game and the atmosphere, the levels, the expansion of the lore on Doom, guy. I love the combat, but I do feel like it's a little bit repetitive here and there, and maybe a little bit of a step back, but I do feel like some people will enjoy it more than Eternal, for the people that didn't like Eternal's micromanagement system. But because I kind of did like how Eternal worked, maybe that's why I feel like it's a bit more of a step back. I'd love to hear what people think about it, although I do feel like for Nightmare Mode, the hardest mode the game has to offer, the parry window is far too lenient, and it actually makes me feel like we're supposed to adjust the sliders to make the game harder for its true Nightmare Mode. I'd like to hear what people think about that as well. Overall, it's an easier Doom game is like what I'm trying to say, but I wonder if that's because it's more mainstream this time round. They're trying to get more people involved in Doom. I think so. But nonetheless, I enjoy the game and I'd love to hear what people think about it. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.